At Texas State Technical College, we understand that the workforce is the heart and soul of our state. With our 100% outcome-based funding, we don't get paid until our graduates get paid. Because at TSTC, we're not just educating Texans, we're ensuring Texas's future.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started. Why don't we go ahead and have our speakers take a seat. My name is Matt Ewald. I serve the Texas Tribune as Director of Events and Live Journalism. Welcome to those joining us in person here in Houston and those joining us online from around the state for our one-on-one conversation with State Senator Paul Bettencourt. Senator Bettencourt took the lead on a number of high-profile issues during the 89th legislative session, reducing housing costs, property taxes, replacing the STAR test, and more. Texas Tribune Editor-in-Chief Matthew Watkins sits down with the senator today to look back on the sessions and look ahead to their impact in 2026. Our program today will run approximately 1 hour with 45 minutes for moderated conversation and 15 minutes for your questions. To get to as many questions as possible, you can submit questions through our Q&A portal at texastribune.org/ask. For all of those who are joining us here in person at Lone Star College, on your program you will find a QR code. You can use that and you can submit your questions throughout the program, and we will get to as many as possible today. We are grateful for the support of our sponsors. Our major sponsors for today's program are Texas State Technical College, Raise Your Hand Texas, and Methodist Healthcare Ministries. Please note that while sponsorship provides critical support for the Tribune, sponsors play no role in programming or the line of questioning for Tribune events. We do want to thank our host, Lone Star College, in this wonderful conference center here on campus to offer a welcome on behalf of Lone Star College. We have both Dr. Christy Vian, Vice Chancellor for Administration and Finance and Chief Financial Officer, and Lieutenant Colonel David Yebra, Senior Associate Vice Chancellor and Chief Veterans Officer. First, would love to welcome up here Dr. Vian.
Thank you all. Thank you for being here with us this morning. It's truly a pleasure to welcome you to Lone Star College and to the Texas Tribune Conversation, a forum that brings together policymakers, educators, civic and business leaders, and engaged community members from across the great state. On behalf of the Chancellor, Mario Castillo, faculty, staff, and more than 97,000 students that we serve and that call Lone Star home, we are welcome and honored to host you today. Today's gathering represents something deeply important, the intersection of education, policy, and community dialogue, a space where we can exchange ideas, challenge assumptions, and explore solutions to make some of the most pressing issues shaping the future of Texas. At Lone Star College, we believe that conversation is the foundation of progress. When thoughtful people come together across disciplines, across perspectives, we don't just talk about what's possible, we begin to build it and begin to build it together. And that's why events like this matter. So we are gathering at a particularly meaningful moment for Texas higher education. The past legislative session and those before it have brought new conversations about funding models, workforce alignment, affordability, and access. At the same time, we are seeing renewed recognition of the critical role that community and technical colleges play in shaping the state's economic and civic future. Texas continues to grow faster than anywhere in the nation, and with that growth comes both opportunity and great responsibility. The opportunity to educate the next generation of innovators, entrepreneurs, and leaders, and the responsibility, most importantly, to ensure that all Texans, regardless of background, income, or zip code, have a pathway to quality of education and meaningful work. And here at Lone Star, we feel and live that responsibility every day. And that's one of the reasons I'd love to introduce our next speaker, Lieutenant Colonel Yebra, and the purpose behind why Lone Star brought him to serve and be our inaugural Chief Veterans Officer. Not only do we believe that we have an obligation to serve the community and the students in our zip code, but we honor the veterans who live in our community, whether they ever choose to be a student in our on any of our campuses, or if they just need a little bit of a lift up to help them. We've hired the Colonel to help us help those veterans in our community. Again, if they choose to not ever take a class, we want to be here to support them and help them get a job in a meaningful pathway. So I hope you will join me in welcoming Colonel Yebra to the stage and welcome him to address any comments that he'd like to share. So.
Thank you, Dr. Vienne. Really appreciate it. And just to, Dr. Vienne knows this, but just to put your expectations at the right level, I graduated from West Point in the top 5% of the bottom third of my class. So I'm a solid, if you round up, and I always ask Dr. Vienne to please cover her ears, but it is really an honor to be a member of the Lone Star family. I've shared with everybody that I've joined a few organizations in a combined of state and federal service for 37 years, and this is one of the best. And it's been a wonderful welcome, wonderful people. What I truly admire is Dr. Vienne's vision, the Chancellor's vulnerability, adaptability, and transparency in everything that we're doing, and to support not only our veterans, but for all our students. And it's a wonderful journey that I'm just beginning. I joked with Dr. Vienne, I think I have it all down after my whopping 2 months. I definitely maybe have everything down as much as I should. But the vision is powerful, and it is a wonderful part of my service now to be able to contribute to the wonderful journey for our veterans, not only here at Lone Star, but in the community, and to help them with access to resources, their family members, their well-being, their mental health, and their overall success in life, a bridge to prosperity, as our Chancellor might say. So thank you very much for the brief opportunity to joke with you a little bit, but I am serious about the wonderful people that are here. And you make up a wonderful part of a wonderful community and a significant reason why I decided to retire in this area. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and I'm honored to share a few thoughts with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you both. We also want to thank all those around the state who make the journalism of the Tribune, including conversations like this, possible by becoming Texas Tribune members. If you'd like to support the work of the Tribune, you can visit texastribune.org/support. That's texastribune.org/support. And finally, here, before we get to today's program, a little more than 2 weeks from now, I promise we will get to the program, gentlemen. A little more than 2 weeks from now, we'll convene in downtown Austin for the Texas Tribune Festival. We invite you to step inside the conversations shaping the future of education, the economy, healthcare, energy, technology, and much more, all with those driving decisions in Texas and across the nation. Our full program is announced. Also, our opening and closing keynotes. You can check all of that out and purchase tickets at tribfest.org. So let's get to today's program. First, elected to the Senate in 2014, Senator Paul Bettencourt represents Senate District 7, which encompasses much of West Harris County. He previously served 10 years, from 1998 to 2008, as the Harris County Tax Assessor Collector. He currently serves as chair of the Local Government Committee and the Select Committee on Civil Discourse and Freedom of Speech in Higher Education. Our moderator today is Texas Tribune Editor-in-Chief, Matthew Watkins. And with that, I thank you all for being here and turn the program over to Matthew.
Thanks, Matt, and thank you, Senator, for being here.
Well, welcome to SD7. This is the heart of my Senate district.
Wonderful. We are excited to be here. Yes. So you've had a very busy year. All legislators have had a very busy year with special sessions, but you in particular have carried some of the most high-profile legislation to make it through these sessions. That work not...
The operative word is to make it through.
Right.
That's right. But that's okay, because the legislature is actually generally designed not to pass bills. So it does take a lot of effort to pass them.
And, you know, one of your most prominent pieces of legislation still needs one more step to go through, which is voter approval this November. We are in the early voting period right now. Let's start there. Property taxes have been sort of maybe your signature issue during the legislative session. What's at stake for Texas voters right now with regard to those?
Well, what's at stake is a huge tax cut that's on the table for them to approve on November the 4th. That's two combination for those under 65. They're getting a 40% increase in the homestead exemption, which will be, when you combine it with the fact that we increase exemptions, which is the most powerful tool as a tax writer you have, because that means people don't pay. And then we're also cutting the tax rate by about 6 pennies. The average will be about $484, but wait, we're not done yet, because the over 65s who have a lifetime of taxes. I can see an old friend of mine who is over 65, Barry Hart in the back. I'll get to pick on you later, Borkoff. Okay. Their average will be $907, but because a lot of them, because of all the reforms we've been doing, this is not our first vote. This is we've had now 3 major constitutional provisions that have passed since 21. Over half of the over 65s won't pay any property tax in the state, which I think is an awesome occurrence. And importantly, it's a recognition of housing affordability, but also a Texas common sense provision, which is if you paid a lifetime of taxes, you deserve a break. So those are Prop 11 and 13. I'm obviously for them. Okay. And since, I can say that, I'm saying go vote for them. But there are 17 total propositions, and about 5 of them are mine, maybe 4, I can't remember. Okay, we passed a lot of legislation.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell us about, it is challenging even for someone whose job it is to keep track of all 17 of those propositions, and, the breakdown of the number there. What stands out to you? What are the most important things voters need to be thinking about there?
Well, Governor Abbott came to recently just last week and said, make it easy, just vote for all 17. Now, there are some really serious provisions here that we're looking at, and that have been priorities of Lieutenant Governor Patrick for some time. One of them is water. In addition, that's Proposition 4. Now, look, we may think that we live in a water-rich portion of the state, and we do compared to others. However, there's already an argument that broke out up in the Trinity River basin that people might be pumping groundwater out from that area. So this water issue hits everywhere. We're putting $1 billion a year into it. This was carried by Senator Perry. I was his first urban person to sign on, but then I'm the last urban Republican. Okay, that's there. So at least I got a chuckle of Ray on that one. And importantly, it's a recognition of the obvious. You need supply, and we also need to fix leaks, because either way, that reduces how much water actually gets to it. See, to keep the Texas miracle going, which we have been the job creation nexus of the United States, you have to have electricity, you got to have water, okay? And if you don't have either one, you will lose jobs, because and tax policy helps all of that by making Texas a tax positive point of view. It's just like my new person who just showed up 2 months ago. He actually picked one of the best counties in the country to retire in, which I think is the term you use, right, David? Was that it? Because you're going to get a $200,000 homestead exemption for the schools, but I think the county actually has a higher one with their optional. It's up closer to $300,000. So he's picked a place where he may not pay any taxes at all, depending upon what type of house he buys. So we're always cognizant of this. That's one thing Lieutenant Governor Patrick and I have looked at is, why we're so keen on homestead exemptions is that it helps with housing affordability, which is really the big problem around the country. And one of the reasons we've got 1,600 people moving here every day, and a lot of them out of California, is they're coming from places there is no housing affordability.
So you've mentioned that was not the first investment in property tax reduction that has been done in recent years. There's been a series, dating back to really, I think, 2019, right?
Right.
And there was a number that caught a lot of people's eye early in the legislative session about the extent of the legislature's investment. I believe it's per biennium now, with all those kind of stacked on top of each other, $51 billion invested.
That's the right number.
Yes, and that's a lot of money. I mean, that's more than I believe that's going from the budget to the 4-year universities in this state, right?
Well, maybe, but okay. That's right. Okay, but not to all. No, certainly not to all of education.
Right.
But we'll get to that
Yes,
in a little bit.
Absolutely. Why was this the right investment to make this time around?
Well, the key thing is you don't want people taxed out of their homes. Okay. Now, going back to 2019, and that is the big pivotal year because we were only spending about $3 billion a year on buying down taxes. We're now up to 51. Before these votes on Tuesday, we were at 44, but that's going to add another effectively 7 to it. And I think this is an important recognition of the obvious too. Before 2019, property taxes for schools were growing 18% per year. Now, we had a huge change in 2019. There was SB2, which slowed city and county taxes, but also HB3, which bought down, and I was a co-sponsor of that, that bought down property taxes, but also cut how much they would grow. Because see, that's the real fight when you're in property. How much do things grow? Well, after that, school taxes have only grown at 3.2% a year. Now, we had hoped that city and county taxes would have come down more. Cities actually have come down about a point, and led by places like the city of Houston that are not trying to overtax, versus Austin, which is your primary place, which Proposition Q is raising the tax rate, if the voters approve, 20% in 1 year. Now, if I was in Austin, I wouldn't be voting for that, okay? Because there's two paths to this. You can either try to live within your means, or you can tax at incredible levels. So we're trying to avoid the latter, but it's one of the bedrocks of all these reforms, of all mine, and Lieutenant Governor agrees with this, and so does the Governor, Speaker, is that it's your vote. You get to vote. Now, if you in Austin vote yourselves a 20% tax rate increase, it's going to be there the rest of your life. So choose wisely. That's Uncle Paul's advice. Now, back to your 51. Yes, because your next question is going to be, is this sustainable?
Yeah.
Go ahead and ask.
Okay. Well,
I don't want to take away your all this research.
So, I mean, what has allowed y'all to do this over the last 6 years has been explosive economic growth in the state, and to a certain extent, some inflation too, because the money coming in to pay for that, a lot of it comes from sales taxes and sales.
Yeah, like the bulk.
Right. Exactly. But the question I think people might ask is, what happens when the economy isn't looking so great? And, we might be entering a period like that. All this UPS, Amazon, Molson Coors, Rivian Automotive, GM, Booz Allen Hamilton, Paramount, all major companies, all have announced major layoffs this week. We might not be, that next legislative session in the situation where there's so much money to go around. Do you worry at all about what the impact of that will be?
We always look forward, and you have to worry about it. Now, Acting Comptroller Hancock just released his look forward. And while we are still in the 20 billions in our reserve fund, okay, and we'll call VSF, and we'll get into all the explanation of it here. We don't have time. But he also looked forward and said he was looking at revenue to be only up 1.7%. So you have to build a model that's sustainable. The reason why these constitutional votes are important is because once it goes into Constitution, therefore it's going to be honored. So these homestead exemptions are critical because they affect 5.7 million homeowners' ability to stay in their homes. And for the over 65s and disabled, it's 2.08 million. Now, again, why are we doing both? The average take home for an over 65, or the average earnings, is roughly $48,000. And when you look at what happens in the rural areas, it drops to 30s. So the fact that we're able to get them another nearly $1,000 benefit is real money. So now, because these lessons have to be learned hard sometimes too. Now, I had the previous record bill on property tax relief was $18 billion. It was passed in 2023. We thought that was a lot until we came back and found out that it really cost us $22.7 billion. Okay. Now, we had to actually take $3.5 billion of the $10 billion that we were planning on using this year to make sure we kept up with what we already did. So we're always mindful of this. $51 billion is the largest single item in the budget right now. Now, here's why. This is why it's important. Why did we do it? When you look through what happened to the Texas economy in COVID, where you slept became more valuable than where you worked. Okay. The residential home increases were astonishing. The tax bills were up 25% across the state, but residential single family was in the stratosphere. And that was because people stopped having to go to work. Most of our major office buildings don't have 100% occupancy. In fact, a lot of them only have 25 or sometimes 50. And we passed a lot of bills about housing affordability, about 9 of them, trying to figure out ways to convert them back into lofts, or what happened at the Rice Hotel down here. Try to get ways to put more multifamily there so there can be multi-use out of these buildings, and cut through a bunch of zoning prohibitions, because we want to give people a place that they can afford. And so the causality here is this. Because we had this huge run up in values, we really had to put some money into, as values went up, cutting the rates and getting people's taxes down. Now, there have been some really, I'm going to just flat, stupid headlines that I've seen in publications. So, state leaders lying about property tax relief. What? Okay. Go look at your bill. Okay. I know Gracie just got her bill from Tomball, and she's down over $1,000. Okay. You don't believe anymore what you see on this. Okay. And
except TexasTribune.org.
Right. Yeah. Right. Except for the Tribune. Okay. Today only from 12 to 1 p.m. noon. We're telling the truth of the Tribune, no matter what. Okay. But right. But flip over the bill and you'll see your past history, because we can't hide from this. Everybody has an opinion now. Okay. That's the point. But opinions are not facts. Facts are on your tax bill. And so we actually put the cut into the bill because I didn't want to have this argument. Well, what's it going to be? No, it's in your bill now. Okay. And go check it, because it's important, because we're not lying. We never have lied. I don't care who says it. We've always said, we've got $51 billion, and then Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker laugh because they can come up with the money, but it's Uncle Paul's job to write the bill, okay?
You mentioned Austin. There are a lot of people in Austin, conservatives in Austin, who have been making calls to state leaders to do something about this, to maybe prevent something like this from happening. You mentioned before, leave it up to the voters. I mean, history has shown Austin voters tend to like property tax increases. Do you see any need for the state to step in to prevent that growth, even if Austin voters are approving it?
Well, we have done some things. Okay. We've, first off, starting this year, anytime that something like that occurs, it's going to say this is a tax increase on city and county, not just schools. We've also looked at the methodology of how they did Project Connect. See, that's the real problem. They've already gotten a 20% increase for Project Connect, which right now hasn't connected anybody, as best I can determine, because it's got a false funding strategy, which is raise money from taxpayers and give it to a third party who does debt. That's a bad model. And they really should have a revote on that. But I'm going to go with this, that I've promoted property tax reform for over 20 years. Every single one of my either charter amendments, everything, always had the public voting, because at the end of the day, it's their money. And after a certain point now, which is what the changes we made in 2019, you have to go to the public and get an approval. Now, when the Austin American Statesman came out against it, I don't know if the Tribune's taken a position.
We don't take positions on those, yeah.
Right, they don't. Nothing. Nothing. Okay. All right. So, for those of you that didn't watch reruns in your age, but Borokoff watched it live. That was Hogan's Heroes. Yeah, right. Digital, right. Okay. That's Sergeant Schultz. Anyway, so I think that vote probably fails. And I think it's good if it fails, because if you over ask, the answer should be no. But if you do what Lubbock did, which is, hey, we need some help at the jail, and that's a conservative town. They took a tax increase to a conservative town, and a conservative town voted for it. So you just have to make sure that you're taking a rational package to the public. Now, if they don't, okay, and I've already done social media on this, you can find 2/3 of your state tax, increase, or excuse me, 2/3 of your state tax decrease gone, because that's like a $600 increase on the average home in Austin. It's a preposterous amount of money. And so I'd be happy to, for equal time, debate anybody on the city of Austin after the vote, because I'm hoping that it goes down, because I think it's an important lesson. Don't ask for too much.
Y'all have spent, it likely will soon be $51 billion on this. Frustration around property taxes continues to be very high. And part of that, I think, is just how property taxes work, right? Like if I get a raise, my taxes go up, but it doesn't feel as painful. But you don't have as much control over the value of your house. And so, living in Austin, my house value has gone up significantly, meaning my tax bill has gone up significantly, even though it doesn't feel like.
Now, did you check this year?
Yeah, and
it finally went down.
And it is going down.
Right,
that is
finally.
correct. That is correct.
Yeah, right.
But I get, like, what I'm sort of getting at with that question is there do we need to be thinking at all beyond buying down school property taxes into a fundamental reshaping of how?
Well, we have. You see, and that's part of what we've done, is we've restricted the growth of government. No matter what income, revenue scheme you use, if you let government grow too fast, it's going to overwhelm their taxpayers. Now, we had a fundamental decision to make in Texas. We've got, the stool, even though this one has more than 3 legs, you've got income taxes, state, you've got sales taxes, and you've got property taxes. We eliminated income tax. Now, why is that important? That's really great for job creation. You've got people leaving California because their marginal tax rates are in the 50%. That's how much they pay the feds and the state. My counterpart in Louisiana told me that they had a corporate income tax that they had put in temporarily, that they probably are going to have to let go of it because it's so unpopular, but that they're losing the size of a mid-sized city in population every year in Louisiana because they don't have the jobs. So that was the right decision, but it puts a lot of pressure then on your sales tax and your property tax, which, Milton Friedman said the property tax is the least bad of the taxes. Now, what people have really frustrated with is we've gone through this huge expansion, and we're now catching up with our cuts. And for the over 65s, they're going to be astonished at the fact that their bill is down. And not just down, it's going to be 0 for many of them. And it takes a while for that reality to set in, because we can talk about it. Look, we passed the bills and, in the spring, we have to wait to see it there's always a wait to see your bill. Now, and we don't have a statewide property tax, which is a good thing, because I don't know how to, look, I consider myself smarter, on some issues. I have no idea how to divide up 4,500 taxing jurisdictions' money. If we went to a 25% sales tax to replace it all, I don't know how to write that algorithm except to use their property tax revenue to split it by. And plus so we don't, because we don't have $86 billion that we can just snap our fingers and say, boom, per year, replace it all. So you've got a lot of opinions here, but eventually ends up with who pays what and how much. And the good news is we took our last, and this I think was a great decision Lieutenant Governor Patrick made with the speaker. We took our last 1.1 billion and threw it at over 65 and disabled homeowners, because they're the ones that really hurt, because they simply don't have the upward ability on income anymore. So I'm happy we made that decision.
So the other steps taken toward housing affordability, not including sales or property taxes, was various measures, which you took a big leading part on, to make it easier for cities to allow for density within their borders. Reducing the minimum lot size in cities to, I believe, 3,000 square feet. Making it easier to build apartments in certain locations where a lot of times neighborhood groups or cities can block.
This was called tyrant veto.
Right, exactly.
That's actually Senator Hughes's bill, even though it came out of my committee.
Right.
I always give stuff to Middleton and Hughes, anybody else, because I've got enough to pass. But that's a really good bill. There was about 9 of them, okay, that we passed because we wanted to get ahead of the housing affordability issue. And if you've noticed, I'm not calling it affordable housing, okay, because that's a federal gig, okay? This is us trying to make sure that we don't leave any stone unturned on using former buildings, getting zoning cut through. It used to be one person could basically stop a multifamily development. And we haven't fixed the granny apartments yet because we can't get that bill out of calendars in-house, but we will. But we're trying everything we can to make sure that the builders don't get locked up on moratoriums, because we got one in Conroe. It's been a rotating 180-degree moratorium on building for almost a year. That nonsense has to stop, because the only way you can get people in homes is to build them. The only way you can get people into homes is for them to afford them. The only way you can get people to stay in homes is for them to be able to afford them long term. And that's why this homestead exemption has been a big part of it too. But we also had you've got a problem with squatters. We finally came up with a bill that it was a good bill that came out of the House that I think did a good job with that, because we had horror stories of people occupying homes. In fact, it was so bad we had someone testify from Mesquite, Texas, that name was Terry Boyette, that she had to go help her mother in Florida. A squatter got her home. A JP made a terrible decision, which is to keep the squatter in the home for Christmas, because she felt bad for the guy not having any place to go, but the homeowner couldn't get their home back for Christmas. Kind of a strange ruling, but we changed that so those could be appealed rapidly too.
This, particularly the density issues, the building of apartments, can be a controversial topic in the suburbs. People concerned about apartments possibly changing the character of neighborhoods and things like that. There have been suburban cities, particularly in North Texas, that have changed rules. I'm going to have to consult my notes here.
Sure.
I believe it's Irving has now requires, in response to these bills passing, any apartment complex built in the city to be built must be 8 floors. It has to include a swimming pool, a dog park, a gym, and a workspace for remote workers. Builders also must include one of a yoga room, a place to wash pets or cars, and a station for cyclists to repair their bikes. I think a lot of people saw this as the state's trying to make it easier to build apartments. The cities are now going to try to find another way to make it harder to build apartments. Does the legislature need to do something about that?
Of course, and we are going to do something about it. Whenever you hear this nonsense or preposterous response like that, yeah, we're going to do something about it, and we're going to pass a bill and stop it. Look, we're in a college campus setting, and we've got a few students here. We had a problem with College Station, which decided that they were going to regulate housing, not based on the square footage of the house, but on the relationship of the renters. If you had more brothers and sisters, you could have more people there, but if you had less brothers and sisters, you couldn't. So we passed a bill and stomped on that, because that's wrong-headed thinking. Oh, here, the college kids just showed up. That's good.
They heard you talking about
them. We just passed
them.
a bill for you guys, okay? So that you don't get some municipality saying that you can't rent an apartment with her because she's not your sister. That's literally what we had to stop in College Station. Now, that Irving thing is government super overreach. Okay. Now, did they allow elevators for the 8th floor or not? I'm just joking. Okay. Well, all right. Yeah. And look, and I caution everybody in local government. They know that if they do something that foolish, there will be a response, and they may not like it. Okay. Now, we don't always agree on everything, and not every bill passes, because we actually had a bill that went out of the Senate that would lower the rollback rate on cities and counties that didn't make it through the House, because people were looking, a couple dozen freshmen were looking for the perfect solution, which was zero property taxes, which are not going to happen unless someday manna from heaven shows up and, we get $86 billion a year. Great. Until then, we're going to fight this nonsense, because look, all Irving is doing is just moving that development out of their city to all the other cities around it. They're really hurting themselves. And and listening to that, the idea that you have to have a yoga room and all this, no offense, that's what the market is for. Let people go out and buy their property because they want to buy it. Let them find a class A, B, or C apartment because they want to rent it. And they make the decision if they're going to pay extra for a yoga room, okay? Which I don't think a lot of people would, because they kind of have a yoga room. It's called their room, okay? So no, this is, I am disappointed, because we went through a really difficult project to eliminate ETJ on cities. College Station was one that really fought it hard. Even though we don't annex anymore unless it's by popular vote, we kept all this property stuck in ETJs. So we finally passed a bill that said, okay, they could get out, and this sounds almost as foolish. So yes, there will be a bill.
All right, excellent. I want to move on to the other major piece of legislation you passed.
It was really huge. It was
huge.
the greatest. I'm not sure which. There's so many on this list. I'm not sure which one you're talking about. But which one do you want to talk about, Matthew?
I would. This is actually. I was in I was at an event with Karl Rove yesterday, and he also has a very good Trump impression. So it's going
right
around.
now. Carl and I could do like mirrors, where, like he's on one side of the mirror, I'm on the other. It'd be a lot of fun. In fact, I'm going to call him and tell him that.
All right, excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So the next one I want to talk about is the STAR test.
Yes.
And we have replaced the STAR test with a new version. Tell me what was wrong with the current version and what will be better about the new one.
Okay, now one thing I do want to get across is that we have had a transformational year in public education. We put in $8 billion. Only $1 billion of it was ESAs, okay? Now, the Comptroller Hancock has already got at Governor Abbott's encouragement, has already got that process going to where we'll see how many people sign up. I thought we were only going to have 60,000. If they get the portal open early, we might have 100. Now, take that $1 billion off of the 8 and you still have 7. And about half that money went to teacher pay. And I'm really happy with this, because we used to pay people longevity pay, which I hate to say, that's socialism in my mind, because if people are doing good, I want them to get money. I want them to have a teacher that can make $100,000. I want a teacher to actually maybe make more than an administrator. Shocking, horribly that. Because Royce West and I agree on two things. He's the ranking Democrat on education. I'm the ranking Republican. We know we got two problems whenever we see them, which is poverty and not good teachers in the classroom. So I'm really proud of now Chancellor Creighton, who got that bill through, and Chairman Buckley, who helped me obviously on this other bill, which is really important. And it's not just that portion of it. We did special education funding. Okay, that was my bill. I think that's Senate Bill 568, where we finally got rid of that old school special education. It was like a choke point on funding. We were underfunding, analyzing kids, not getting what they needed on special education. That's gone. Virtual education, we passed that, that's my bill 569. That means you can do virtual ed. And in fact, Katie just announced a big virtual, high school, was it, Elizabeth? You're right. Of course, they failed to mention the bill author, but anyway, talk to them later. Anyway, but when they did it, it's for the right reasons. Now, back to this one, okay, which is the key cornerstone change. You have to have an A through F public accountability system. We have fought a long and arduous battle with about 100 ISDs and really about 30 of them, whose lead plaintiff got an F the first year we can get the new numbers out. And instead of telling the public that they had an F, they should have been fixing the problem. So it's important that we have this A through F tuned up to look at what the testing results are. And what was wrong with STAR test was this. Everybody had a real problem with it. It's at the end of the year. It's a high stakes test. Everybody's either going to pass or fail. Okay. And what we found by working with Chairman Buckley, but we also had taken a lot of testimony on this for years, was other states had come up with 3 tests. Beginning of the year to test you how you knew, what did you know? And you get the results back like that, okay? Then the middle of the year, same type of diagnostic test, electronic, get your results back so the teacher can help you learn. Gee, shocking. We don't want to teach the test, we want to teach learning early, okay? And then, so then we have the third test, which is a criterion-based Texas TEKS with a norm output that tells you where you're at. And I'm looking at this year in 2025, and over my shoulder, I'll be able to say it's the most transformational year in public education that's occurred since World War II, because everything happened at once. More funding, educational savings accounts, they're now Texas Freedom accounts. Okay, they've got renamed. And then virtual education, special education, and A through F, and even more importantly, a STAR test change. There has been no other state in the union, because I've had American Legislative Exchange Council check this, that's done all of this in 1 year. No other state in the union has launched a savings account program with $1 billion. Nobody else has thrown $8 billion into it. Nobody else has made all these changes at once. And I think this is going to have tremendous payoff in public education for years to come. It's not just the raises that people will get. They're very important to the process. It's the results. What did they learn? Because then they've got to go get out of public ed and either come to places like Lone Star or go to, a 4-year institution, or, get a technical certificate, whatever makes you money. And I can't wait to see all this in about 4 years. It's going to be fabulous to see these changes.
Okay, we're going to get to audience questions here in a minute. I'll have one last question to ask, but just a reminder for folks, you have the flyer in front of you with the QR code. I struggled to remember what that was called, but where you can submit a question. People online may also ask a question. But first, I want to talk to you about the Select Committee on Civil Discourse and Freedom of Speech in Higher Education, which you are chairing. This was a committee that was put together in the aftermath of the assassination of Charlie Kirk on a college campus. What is the goal of this committee? What do you want to learn? What do you want to accomplish?
The goal of this committee is to do exactly what we're doing today, which is able to come to a higher university and have civil discourse, because it looks like we're going to have it. Okay, and that's a good thing. This was Lieutenant Speaker Burrows' idea that Lieutenant Governor Patrick agreed with, because in the post-assassination of Charlie Kirk, there was a lot of bad decisions that people were making about what they said on here. People condoning assassination. Look, I'm old enough to have lived through 1968, okay, which I know there's some folks here out that did. And when we had assassinations back then, they were bellwether, shocking events. And I can still remember, when I was watching live television, when Bobby Kennedy got off the stage and they came back and said, Bobby Kennedy's been shot. Is there a doctor in the house? That's not even counting Martin Luther King or a whole bunch of other people that occurred. So we have to decide what type of nation are we going to be. We're going to be someone that abhors it and talks about violence at that level and saying that we abhor that. Now, I can't say that people can't express their opinions, but I can say you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. So we're going to look at that balance, okay? Because it's really, this is part of what's wrong now. It's so frothy on social media. I've been lucky enough to have a radio program where for 20 years, Democrats and Republicans have talked about issues, and we can disagree and we can laugh and we can occasionally cry about what's occurred to us in our lives. But we cannot condone people on public payrolls using, emails from government saying this guy should have been dead. I wish he was dead. I'm glad he's dead. Wow, we've really gone over our skis at that point in time, and we're going to faceplant as a society if we don't realize we have to pull this back. I was thinking about this, Matthew, on the way here. I've had a friend, Bob would remember, Representative Noriega, okay? And we have been in public policy, or Raywood for sure, for 25 years. And we've always been able to treat each other civilly. And he actually showed up and testified on a bill. I hadn't seen him in a long time, repeating what I told him 25 years ago, which happened to be true, still is. But there are fundamentals that we have to agree to. So the civil discourse idea is important. We're going to have to decide what's too much. But more importantly, we want everybody to have their views, but we cannot condone assassination. I'll just leave you with this. Look, when a Democrat senator in Minnesota got shot, she happened to be a Democrat. There was a condemnation that came out of the Congress, which was unanimous. When Charlie Kirk got shot, it was not unanimous. That's a mistake. Anybody who gets assassinated in this country for political reasons it's wrong. It has to be condemned. I don't care what political party you are. I don't care what you look like. I don't care who you sleep with. I don't care anything. But if somebody is assassinated, it has to be condemned, or we become a third world party. Actually, a third world country. Okay? And I don't want that to happen in the United States. So we're going to have a big discussion about this, and we're going to bring in student body presidents. We're going to bring in university people. We're going to bring in everybody. And I'm actually looking for the guy because I hope I can find him. He kind of acted up at San Marcos. He got busted off. He got busted. He opened a GoMe account, a GoFundMe account. It hit $50,000. He wants to come back. Okay. And I kind of want him to testify because he's been like on all 4 points of the basketball court. So we're going to see what happened to him in his journey.
Well, I want to ask you specifically about him because the background here is there was a Charlie Kirk visual, and he essentially jumped up onto the stage of that visual and mimicked the assassination of him. It was a repulsive thing to have done. It was a terrible thing to have done.
Right.
You know, free speech would say that even the repulsive, terrible things that you do should not be punished by our government. He was, removed from school. Does the protecting his right to say something horrible, disgusting, repulsive fall under the expectations of free speech in your mind?
It's exactly why I want him to testify, because he went through everything. Okay. He acted out, got busted out of school, apologized, opened a GoFundMe account, and he wants to come back. Now, there's no other person that's been through this whole journey. Okay. But at the same time at San Marcos, there were people espousing really negative stuff that were a lot older than he was that should know better. And they were doing it on state emails. Okay. So we're going to look at all of this. Okay. Because you have to find that fine line. And really, it's more of it's more like an Occam's razor, because the farther you go down, you're going to split one side versus the other. And so what right do you protect? Okay. So I'm actually looking forward to that testimony because I want to hear from him, because he's been through this journey, and I also want to hear from the school what they did and why and what their basis was. But I'll tell you this, TEA's got 168 investigations underway. There is no way that any teacher at Lone Star College or any public school should be condoning the assassination. I don't care who it is, and then think, oh, I can come back and teach kids. What are you going to teach kids? Oh, that we should have political assassinations. Is that your thought process? Sorry, that gets stamped out. Okay. Because I've got a zero tolerance for that. And I think most of the folks in the legislature do. You can't go down that road. So we're going to take a look at what we know is behavior that shouldn't happen. We're going to take at what the Constitution says should be able to happen. And we're going to try to come up with a good solution.
Matt, do we have any audience questions?
I'm sure we do.
All right.
Just a reminder for our in-person audience and for those joining us online, you can submit your questions at texastribune.org/ask. For those here in person, it's right there on your program. Just use the QR code. But we do have some questions coming in. Let's see here.
Since I do live radio every week, I expect that on line one, caller one, go.
We are going to get to questions, the ones with a question mark at the end. Caitlin from Houston says, you've mentioned building or redeveloping properties is the best way to address the housing affordability issue, but how do we balance that need with necessary government oversight of developments? In this area, there's a real concern with no checks and balances. Developments will happen in dangerous parts of the floodplain, potentially jeopardizing flood insurance coverage for the entire region. Now, there have been attempts at the legislature to give private developers even more authority and less oversight. How does mandating local building regulations in Austin ensure local governments can be responsive?
Are we going to have bonus time or not? Okay, anyway. In the special session, I passed Senate Bill, gosh, I can't remember, was it 9 or 4? Anyway, this was the one where we looked at flooding in watersheds. And that was for the emergency sirens, okay? They also passed some bills that talked about floodplain. I know Senator Perry did, because part of the problem is if you build in a floodplain, okay, you're going to have trouble. But if you build in a floodway, you are already in trouble, and that occurred up in the Guadalupe area. So that's a sea change that changed. There's also another bill that affects this, which is House Bill 21, which was, these are housing finance corporations. And part of the problem that we are fighting, I see Caitlin out in the audience, is we're fighting 5 or 6 taxing units that decided they were going to get in the business of taking apartments off of the tax roll. And it didn't care if the county commission voted for it or the city. They just parachuted in, grabbed an apartment complex, flipped it into effectively a tax exemption for 99 years. Now, we stopped that, and there's going to be a lot of activity about this, in the courts, but the right thing to do, because my furthest left person on my committee is Molly Cook, who happens to be from Harris County, and my furthest right person on my committee happens to be Mays Middleton, and he's nearly in Harris County, and they agreed on this, because you can't give people a 99-year exemption from property taxes and not lower rents. And we did our best to try to get anybody in that industry to say, would you agree to 60% of it going to lower rents? Gates's bill passed at 50. Is the right number 42? Can you give us 17% of those exemptions to go to rents? And the answer was 0, because it turned out a lot of people had overplayed in a period of excess, and they needed every dollar to keep their deal together. So that's why they took it. The reason why I'm bringing this up is that this housing is complicated. And so when we see a problem like we did with Housing Finance Corporation, we're going to pull it back. Now, I think there was an article in the paper this morning that there's only like 2 inspectors in the city of Houston. I'm assuming that the center, now Mayor Whitmire, he reads it faster than I do because he'll send me copies of the articles. So we'll be looking at this. But you have to balance it. But you don't want people to have a free lunch on the renters, which is what those housing finance corporations were, because 0 of that exemption, which is the biggest exemption you can grant, And the biggest expense multifamily had was property tax was taken off the table, but there were no rent decreases. So we're always mindful of this push-pull. And when we see a problem, we're going to fix it.
Question from Isabella from Houston. Will this new implementation of exams determine if a student may pass or fail a grade? How will it create change in the classroom if students are still unengaged when it comes to actually taking these exams?
That's a great question, Isabel, because that's why we're going to 3 exams. We want to engage them when they walk in the door, which is, what do you know? And then we want to engage them in the middle of the year of how much you have learned. And then we're going to engage you to see where you're at the end. And the test matters. The test results matter to the A through F, to ranking schools on how they're doing and teaching, okay? And we're going to make sure that people get a quality education for this whole process. But the engagement of learning has to go on. I'll give you an example of what was wrong with the process. We used to shut learning down a week out, maybe 10 days, I can't remember the exact number, that said, no more learning. We're going to teach to the test. We're going to teach to that test. We're going to teach every day to that test. We're going to teach that test, and we're going to pass that test. We calculated that was something in the neighborhood of 92 million instruction hours thrown down the toilet because we were teaching to the test instead of teaching learning so the kids could pass the test. So now here's why I'm very bullish on this. Okay, I won't do my TR, bully, impersonation. We are going to take 3 years to get this going. This next year, TA is going to be looking at writing the questions, because when you go to these automated things, you're going to be in an automated question and answer where the more you know, the more harder the question is going to be, because it's going to probe your knowledge. Because these first 2 tests are not gotcha questions. And then we're going to take a huge beta site in the following year and roll this out everywhere we can. It's just test it and smash it with a mallet and see what we need to fix. And then in the 3rd year, we're going to roll it out. So I think that by the time we get there, it's going to be a fair test. It's going to be learning is going to be back in the classroom, and we're not going to waste 92 million hours shutting learning down a week before taking the test. Good questions.
So we have time for one more question. We have a few minutes. I'll ask this question, and then Matthew, you can close it out. But you close your conversation talking about issues of free speech. This person asks, how does political opinion affect the classroom if teachers don't share them with the classroom? Are teachers not allowed to have an opinion outside of school?
Everybody's allowed to have opinion outside of work or school or wherever. That's not the point. The point here is that you have to look at, what do you want the state to espouse in a classroom? And if you're one of the 168 teachers that have said assassination is good, I'm not sure I want you in the classroom, because I don't want you to espouse that assassination is good. There are some moral absolutes here that we have to go back to, and that's one of them.
There was a professor who spoke at a socialist conference talking about the overthrowing the system of government here. Would that apply in that case?
Well,
too?
I'm going to look forward to having that testimony and find out. Look, it's as a fan of Les Miserables, there's always a time where in the French republics, people went to the barricades. Okay, now that's a matter of history. Okay, but when we look at things that we know are right and wrong, and it's a clear, bright line. I don't care whether it was the Democrat state senator up in Minnesota. The minority whip, is from Louisiana, nearly died on a softball field because he was attacked by a Bernie Sanders supporter, of all things. President Trump's had 2 major assassination attempts. I've watched, enough footage to see, Ronald Reagan had that issue, about all the way back to McKinley, even though I don't think it was taped. It's okay. You have to say that's wrong. It's wrong. I'm sorry. Your opinion no longer matters to espouse to kids, assassination is a great tool. No, it's wrong. Sorry, you don't get to teach that. Now, if we had more time, we'd talk about DEI and about what's going on with that issue, because there's a lot of moving components with that too. I think that we've wasted a lot of time on that issue. We need to get back to people focused on it, but you have to let people express their views, but they cannot express some views that, make them a bad teacher, in my opinion, which is I support assassination. Wow, I just, sorry, never going to happen as long as a Bettencourt has their name on a bill.
All right. Well, I want to say thank you for participating in some civil discourse here on this college campus right now. And a big thank you to our audience, both online and in the room. Been a great conversation. Thank you so much, Senator.
No, thank you. Bye-bye.